Coffee hit the marble floor before it hit her shoes, and somehow both were ruined at once. "Watch it," the young woman said, not even glancing down. "Some of us have actual jobs to get to." Isla knelt anyway, pressing a wad of napkins into the spreading puddle, feeling the warmth soak through the knee of her slacks. She didn't look up right away. She had learned a long time ago that looking up too fast only made people feel like they had to say something else. "I'm sorry," Isla said quietly. "I'll get this cleaned up." "You'd better. I have a 9 o'clock." The woman, 26, maybe 27, hair blown out that morning at a salon that charged more for a single appointment than Isla's badge. Lanyard cost, stepped around the mess in her heels without breaking stride. Behind her, a man in a checked blazer laughed under his breath. "New girl's slow," he said, like it was a fact of nature, like the sun rising in the east. "But she's still mopping that up at lunch." They walked off laughing, the two of them, already forgetting the moment had happened at all. What they did not know, what none of the 61 employees on the 11th floor of Ashcombe Wealth Group knew, what none of the 218 employees in the entire building knew, was that the tired-looking temp on her knees with a fistful of wet napkins owned every square foot of marble under her, along with the elevators, the boardroom 11 floors above, and, as it happened, most of their paychecks. In 4 days, every single one of them would find that out the hard way. And she would remember every name. You should know something about Isla Fontaine before this goes any further. Because if you only meet her on her knees, with coffee soaking through her slacks, you will get the wrong idea entirely. And this is not a story about a woman who let herself be small. The building was called the Larimore Tower. 16 stories of tinted glass in the financial district of Denver, and Ashcombe Wealth Group occupied the top 9 of them. It managed just under $1.8 billion for clients who like to say things like wealth preservation instead of money. And it had a lobby with a fountain that ran even in winter because somebody decided that was elegant. Everyone who worked there knew 2 things about the company. First, that it had been founded 11 years earlier by someone almost nobody had actually met. A founder who, according to office legend, had cashed out early, moved somewhere warm, and now just collected checks. Second, that there was a woman who came through twice a week doing odd jobs, restocking the pantry, running documents between floors, fixing the printer nobody else could be bothered to understand, and that she was, by unanimous and largely unspoken agreement, someone you didn't need to remember the name of. Her name was Isla Fontaine. She had founded the company. She was 29 years old. Only 3 people in the building knew that. The first was Corinne Ashdown, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s who had been Isla's executive assistant for 6 years and who greeted her every Tuesday and Thursday morning in the service stairwell with a nod and nothing else. The second was Beatrice Langford, the chair of the board, who had known Isla since she was 22 years old and broke, and who called her every Sunday night to go over the week ahead. The third was Milo Bracken, the overnight security guard, a soft-spoken man who had done 2 deployments overseas and who saluted Isla every single time, the moment she badged through the service entrance. Nobody had ever noticed. Nobody had ever asked why the security guard saluted the temp. Why did the founder of a billion-dollar firm spend 2 mornings a week wiping down a break-room counter and getting yelled at by 26-year-old wealth associates? The answer was a woman named Dolores Fontaine. Her mother, in 1998, in a diner off Route 20 outside Toledo, Ohio, Dolores, 39 years old, working her second job of the day 7 months, from finding out she had 6 years left to live, was on her hands and knees mopping up a coffee spill that a well-dressed couple had knocked over on purpose, laughing to see what she'd do. "Do it again, and try not to be so slow this time," the man said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Dolores did it again. She said, "Yes, sir," and did it again, because there was a 9-year-old girl in the corner booth doing her math homework and eating a free grilled cheese the manager had quietly comped her. and that girl needed her mother to keep this job. That girl was Isla. She saw the whole thing. She was 9 years old, and she could not do a single thing about it. And she never forgot the sound of her mother's knees on the linoleum. 6 years later, when Dolores was dying in a hospital bed in Toledo with a 15-year-old daughter holding her hand, she said the words that would run Isla's entire life afterward, quietly, between the machines. "Baby, if you ever build something, build it so nobody has to feel that small in it. Titles lie. Money lies. But the way somebody treats a person who can't do a thing for them, that's the only report card that means anything." Isla never forgot it. She had it in her mother's handwriting, on a card in her wallet to this day. For 11 years, twice a month, she picked a different floor of her own company, put on the plainest clothes she owned, clipped on a badge that said nothing but Isla, and worked. She listened. She watched. And she found out exactly what kind of people her managers hired, and promoted and protected when they were sure nobody important was looking. There was one more thing nobody at Ashcombe knew. For 4 months, Isla had been quietly building a case. Wire transfers that didn't reconcile. 3 vendor accounts that existed only on paper. A pattern of money leaving the firm through the back door while the front door reported record profits. Someone on the executive floor was stealing. Carefully, patiently, and Isla had almost every receipt she needed. This particular week, she had chosen to work the 11th floor, wealth management and human resources. She had no idea that a 26-year-old associate named Bianca Sterling was about to make the worst decision of her career on a Monday morning over a spilled latte. And Friday, as it happened, was payday. It started small, it always does, Monday 7:40 a.m. Isla was wiping down the pantry counter on 11 when Bianca Sterling walked in holding a fresh cold brew, saw her bent over a syrup stain someone had left on Friday, and, without breaking her conversation on the phone, tipped her cup sideways and let a third of it splash across the floor an inch from Isla's shoe. "Oops," Bianca mouthed, not even lowering the phone. Isla straightened, looked at the mess, looked at her. "I'll take care of that," she said. "You'd better. I've got a 9 o'clock with Porter." 2 steps out the door, Bianca turned back, pulled $1 from her bag, and tossed it near the puddle. "Get yourself a coffee. On me. Ironic, right?" She laughed at her own joke the whole way down the hall. By 9:30, Bianca was showing the video she'd filmed. She'd caught the moment on her phone. Of course, she had. To her friend Corey Hutchins, an associate 2 desks down, with a gym bag permanently parked under his chair and a laugh you could hear through drywall. She just stood there," Bianca said, and Corey watched it twice, cackling both times. "Bro, she's like a robot that's out of batteries, right? And she didn't even flinch." Corey leaned back, scanned the floor, and spotted Isla wheeling a small cart of office supplies down the hallway. He got up, walked over, and as she passed, nudged the cart with his hip, sending a stack of printer paper sliding to the carpet. "Whoops," he said. "Careful. Somebody should really watch where they're going." He walked back to his desk and high-fived Bianca without breaking stride. Meredith Pruitt saw the whole thing. Meredith was the HR director, 35, an MBA from a school she mentioned in the first 10 minutes of every conversation. The kind of woman who used the word culture the way other people use the word rules. She walked past the scattered paper, glanced down at Isla gathering it off the floor, and caught Bianca's eye. She said nothing. She just smiled, small, tight, complicit, and pulled Bianca aside near the copier. "Listen," Meredith said, voice dropped low. "I didn't see a thing, but if you happen to notice her being slow, or careless, or I don't know, forgetting things, write it down. Dates, times. I could have her off the contract by Friday if the file's clean." Bianca blinked. "Wait, really? I thought temps were basically impossible to get rid of." "Not if the paperwork's good. Document everything. Make it specific." Meredith smoothed the front of her blazer and walked off like she'd just discussed lunch orders. Bianca practically skipped back to her desk. By lunchtime, 6 of them were crowded into the break room. Bianca, Corey, an analyst named Priya, a compliance associate, everyone called Chels, and two others who'd wandered over because something was clearly happening and they didn't want to miss it. They'd filled 3 water bottles from the tap. When Isla rounded the corner with her cart, they emptied all 3 onto the floor at once, a wide, glistening sheet of water spreading toward the cabinets. "Big spill," Bianca called out, hand pressed dramatically to her chest. "We need cleanup, stat." Isla set down her cart, looked at the water, looked at the 6 young faces already reaching for their phones, and understood exactly what this was. She got down on her knees. Chels pulled up a stopwatch app. "Okay, bets everybody. I say 9 minutes." 12, Corey said. "Look at her. She's basically moving in slow motion." Isla wrung out the mop and began. The 6 of them formed a loose half-circle around her, counting out loud. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. And somewhere around the 5th Mississippi, Corey started clapping along, slow and deliberate, and one by one the others joined until all 6 of them were clapping in unison, while a woman knelt on the floor mopping up water they had poured out for her on purpose. Near the end, Bianca accidentally tipped a second bottle she'd been hiding behind her back directly into the clean section. Isla had just finished. The room burst into laughter. Isla didn't say anything. She moved the mop to the new puddle and kept working. That was Monday. You'd think that would be the worst of it. It wasn't. Tuesday morning, Bianca started a private group chat called New Girl Watch. She added 8 people. By lunch there were 19. By the end of the day there were 26. And someone had made a meme. Isla's face pasted onto a cartoon sloth. Captioned productivity update. Somebody else posted a countdown clock with no explanation needed. Everyone understood it was counting down to when she'd finally be let go. The worst of Tuesday happened at lunch. 20-some people were packed into the break room, eating salads, off their laps when Isla walked in to wipe down the long table by the window. Bianca stood up on a chair. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, arms spread wide like a ringmaster. "Welcome to day 2 of the Great Cleanup Challenge. Place your bets now. Will she finish before the lunch rush ends?" People laughed. Someone whistled. Corey started a slow clap. Chels joined him. Then 2 more. Then somebody, nobody could later say who started it, began chanting, low and rhythmic. Too slow, clapping along to the beat while a woman wiped down their table in silence. Within 30 seconds the whole room had picked it up. 22 voices, more or less, pounding out the same 2 words over and over. Isla stopped. She set the rag down. She stood up slowly, straightened her back, and looked around the room. At every single face, one at a time. She didn't say anything. She just looked, and she memorized. Then she picked the rag back up and finished the table. Standing in the doorway, drawn by the noise, was Milo Bracken. He took out his phone and started recording. 2 minutes and 31 seconds of footage, the clearest, ugliest proof of what 22 grown adults could do to one quiet woman on her lunch break. When she finished, Isla turned to Bianca, still standing on her chair. "Does your mother know you do this?" she asked quietly. The room went still for half a second. Bianca recovered fast, laughing loud and performative. "My mom knows I bring home 6 figures, sweetheart. What do you bring home?" Half the room went ooh. Isla looked at her for a long moment. "More than you'd think," she said. She wheeled her cart out of the room. By Wednesday, it had become organized. Corey and another associate taped a set of battery-powered alarm clocks under the pantry cart, timed to go off at 9 sharp, blasting a recording somebody's phone had made. A voice shouting, over and over, "Wake up, slowpoke." Isla found the cart, silenced all 3 alarms without a word, and kept working. The clip someone posted of the moment hit 6 figures in views by that evening on some app Isla had never once opened. Thursday, Bianca ordered a cake, pink, icing, delivered to the office that morning. It read, "Bon voyage, honey. Try to keep up next time." She set it on the break room counter while Isla was scrubbing the microwave. "Here," Bianca said, sliding a paper plate toward her. "Consider it a going-away present." We all chipped in. Somebody snickered that carbs probably weren't in the budget for someone on her salary. Meredith walked through, saw the cake, posed for a photo with 3 of the women, and posted it to her own profile that afternoon. Team culture at its finest. Gratitude. She'd cropped Isla out of the frame entirely. Isla did not eat the cake. She finished the microwave, pushed her cart to the next room, and kept counting faces. Friday was payday, and Friday, Isla had already decided, was the day this ended. Friday, 6:10 a.m. Isla came through the service entrance the way she always did, plain badge on, cart waiting where she'd left it the night before. Milo was finishing his overnight shift by the door, and this time, when he saluted her, his eyes were wet. "You holding up okay, Miss Fontaine?" he asked quietly, the only place in the building he ever used her real name. "I will be, Milo. After today." He didn't ask what she meant. He just held the door. She started her rounds like any other week: pantry, printer room, the long hallway, by the windows. To anyone watching a security feed, it looked exactly like every Tuesday and Thursday of the last 2 years. But 11 floors up, the mood was electric. Everyone knew. The termination meeting was already on the calendar. 3 o'clock, conference room 11B, and the whole floor had spent the week waiting for the show. Bianca had brought in cupcakes. Corey had a bottle of Prosecco in his desk drawer. Meredith kept walking past Bianca's cubicle with a small, satisfied nod, like a woman checking on a roast in the oven. At 11 that morning, 2 things happened that nobody on 11 noticed at all. The first, Corinne Ashdown, sitting at her desk on the 16th floor, opened the shared calendar system and quietly changed the location of the 3 o'clock meeting. Moved it from 11B all the way up to the executive boardroom, 16th floor. She sent no notification. She simply changed the field and saved it. The second thing. Corinne called the payroll department. "Hi Denise, it's Corinne, up in the founder's office. Ms. Fontaine would like to hand out this cycle's paychecks personally this afternoon. Could you bring the full batch up to 16 by 2:30? Yes, all 218. Thank you so much." Nobody had actually asked payroll to do this except Isla herself, through Corinne. Meredith had no idea the company still printed physical checks for anyone. She'd assumed, the way people who've never had to worry about it always assume, that everyone got paid the same clean, invisible way she did. By 12:15, 218 crisp, white envelopes sat stacked on the long walnut table in the 16th floor boardroom, each one printed with a name, each one holding a check with a blank signature line in the bottom right corner. At 1 o'clock, Meredith got a calendar notification that the meeting location had changed and frowned at her phone. She called Corinne. "The Fontaine termination. Why is it up on 16? Corinne's voice stayed perfectly even. "Mrs. Fontaine wants to handle it herself this afternoon. Miss Fontaine wants. The founder wants to be there." Meredith had never once seen the founder in person. Nobody had, really, outside of Beatrice Langford and a handful of board members. But Corinne was the founder's office. And Corinne was never wrong about scheduling, so Meredith shrugged it off. "Fine, we'll see you up there." At 2:40, Isla wheeled her cart into the service elevator and pressed 16. When the doors opened, Corinne was waiting with a garment bag over her arm. "Messieurs Fontaine, Corinne." Neither of them smiled. There was nothing funny about any of it. They walked together down a hallway that nobody from the lower floors even knew existed, to a private office with her name in small brass letters on the door that almost nobody had ever bothered to read closely. Inside, on the desk, sat a slim silver pen, the same one she'd used to sign every paycheck for 11 years. She took off the plain badge. She took off the gray cardigan. Corinne helped her into a charcoal suit, ivory blouse, and a thin gold chain that had belonged to her mother. She straightened the collar herself, in the mirror, the way Dolores used to straighten hers before church. "Mama," Isla said quietly to the glass. "I tried to build it right." Corinne handed her a black folio. Inside were 4 months of careful work: the Shell vendor invoices, the wire transfer records, photographs of Porter Ainsley, the firm's chief financial officer, meeting his brother-in-law in a parking structure to hand off a flash drive. Corinne also handed her the silver pen. "They're gathering in the boardroom now, ma'am," Corinne said. "Beatrice is already there, so is counsel, and the outside auditors. And 2 agents from the field office arrived downstairs 10 minutes ago. Security's bringing them up the back way." Isla nodded. "And the checks? On the table? All 218. She took a long breath. "Then let's get to work." The executive boardroom had a table that could seat 20, and walls lined with framed magazine features, from the company's short but sharp history, a regional business journal, a national finance outlet, a profile with the headline, "The Youngest Founder on the Street." Every photo showed the same woman, at different ages. None of the people about to walk through that door had ever looked closely enough to recognize her. At 2:58, Isla sat at the head of the table. In front of her, the stack of envelopes. Beside it, the silver pen. She uncapped it, drew the first check from its envelope, and signed her name in a clean, practiced hand. Isla R. Fontaine. She set it aside and reached for the next. Around the table sat Beatrice Langford in a dark blue suit, 2 outside auditors with laptops open, general counsel, 3 board members, Corinne taking notes on a legal pad, and in the corner, 2 federal agents in plain suits, sitting very still. Isla signed another check, and another. At exactly 3 o'clock, the boardroom door opened. Meredith walked in first, holding a folder labeled Fontaine, I. Contract termination. Behind her came Porter Ainsley, mildly annoyed at being pulled up to the executive floor for what he'd assumed was a 5-minute HR formality. Behind him came Bianca Sterling, who had insisted on coming along, because she wanted to film the moment the temp walked out. All 3 of them stopped in the doorway. They saw the table. They saw the room full of people. They saw 2 men in dark suits standing very still by the wall. They saw the stack of envelopes, and at the head of the table, in a tailored charcoal suit, signing checks with a silver pen, they saw the woman they had spent a week calling slow. Isla did not look up. The pen kept moving. For 5 full seconds, nobody said anything. The only sound in the room was the scratch of ink on paper. Bianca's phone slowly lowered from where she'd raised it, forgotten in her hand. Beatrice Langford stood. She didn't raise her voice. She never needed to. "For those of you meeting her for the first time," she said, "allow me to introduce Isla Fontaine, founder, chief executive, and majority owner of Ashcombe Wealth Group. The woman whose signature has appeared on every single paycheck any of you have ever been handed at this company." The silence that followed was worse than the first one. Meredith's mouth opened, closed, opened again, and produced no sound at all. Porter Ainsley's face went the particular shade of gray a face goes when the brain has understood something the mouth hasn't caught up to yet. And Bianca's knees simply gave out. She didn't fall exactly. She grabbed the back of the nearest chair and slid downward in a slow, controlled collapse, shoulders shaking. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." One of the auditors slid a glass of water toward her. She never touched it. Isla signed 3 more checks, calmly, methodically, then set the pen down and folded her hands. "Please," she said, "sit. We do have a performance conversation to have. Just not the one you scheduled." Meredith found her voice first, she always did. It came out high and fast. "Fontaine, there's clearly been the file was thorough, I was only following the standard." Isla raised one hand. She didn't say stop, she didn't have to. Meredith's voice died in her throat. Porter tried next, plastering on the smile pie probably used at every client dinner. "Isla, wow, what an honor. Finally, I've been meaning to introduce myself properly for." "Sit down," Isla said. 2 words. Porter sat. Bianca was still gripping the chair. The auditor guided her into it, and she stared. At the envelopes, at the pen, at the thin gold chain at Isla's collarbone, and put both hands over her face. Isla waited. Then she reached for a tablet on the table, tapped it twice, and the screen on the wall lit up. The video began to play. Bianca standing on a chair in the break room. 22 voices, chanting too slow, the clapping, the laughing. Isla on her knees in the middle of it. It ran 2 minutes and 31 seconds. Nobody in the room moved. When it ended, Isla turned the screen off. "I'm not showing you that to humiliate you, Miss Sterling," she said. "I'm showing it to you because in a few minutes I'm going to ask you a question, and the honesty of your answer is going to decide whether you leave this building today with a future in this industry or without one." She turned to the wall of framed articles. She pointed at the earliest one, a young woman, 22, standing in front of a rented office with a set of keys in her hand. "That's me, the year after my mother died. She spent her life waiting tables at a diner off a highway in Ohio. She was treated, more days than not, the way you all treated me this week. I built this company so that would not happen inside it. And for 11 years, mostly it didn't." She let the room sit with that. "Twice a month, for 11 years. I've walked these floors doing the work nobody thinks matters. Because titles lie, and paychecks lie, and performance reviews lie. But how a person treats someone who can't do a single thing for them. That's the only report card a leader will ever actually earn." She turned to Porter Ainsley and slid the black folio across the table. It stopped directly in front of him. This was going to be a separate conversation. "Since we're all here, open it." He didn't. She opened it for him. 3 shell vendor accounts, all quietly incorporated by his brother-in-law, all paid out of Ashcombe funds over 14 months. Total, $3.6 million. Porter's face went from gray to white. The 2 agents rose from their chairs. "Mr. Ainsley," the senior agent said, "please stand up and place your hands behind your back." He didn't move at first. He was still staring at the folio. Sweat had broken along his hairline. "Mr. Ainsley, stand up." He stood. They read him his rights in the flattest, calmest voice imaginable. The cuffs clicked into place. He looked across the table at Isla, mouth working, no sound coming out.
"Take him out the service hallway,"
Beatrice said quietly. No need for a scene in the lobby. The door closed behind them. The room was very still. Isla set down her pen and looked at Meredith. "Messieurs Pruitt, sit." Meredith sat. She hadn't realized she was still standing. "What's about to happen to you isn't happening because you tried to fire me," Isla said. "People have tried before. It's happened. I'm not fragile." She slid a thin folder across the table. "It's happening because of these." Meredith opened it with shaking fingers. Inside were 7 personnel files. Former employees, every one of them over 60, or visibly pregnant at the time of their termination, or recovering from a medical leave. Every file showed the same pattern: clean reviews for years, then a sudden cluster of write-ups in the month before they were let go. "Every one of these terminations crossed your desk," Isla said. "Every one was signed off by you. Auditors flagged the pattern 7 months ago. I've been waiting to see how far you'd take it. This week, you tried to add an 8th name to that list, mine. The difference is, I happen to own the company." Meredith's lips moved without producing much sound. General Counsel slid a single sheet of paper toward her. "A termination letter. Effective immediately, for cause, severance withheld, pending a wrongful termination class action the firm would be helping the 7 former employees file." Then Isla turned to Bianca. Mascara tracked down both cheeks, looking for the first time all week very young. "How old are you, Miss Sterling?" 26, Bianca said, barely audible. "My mother was 23 when she had me. She waited tables 6 nights a week and came home with the same ache in her knees you watched me have this week. When you looked at me, what did you think my life was?" Bianca opened her mouth. Nothing came. "That," Isla said gently, "is the honest answer. You didn't think. That's the part I need you to sit with. Not the fear, not the embarrassment. The fact that you looked at a person and didn't think of her as one." She let the silence stretch a moment longer, then offered the choice. "Termination, effective now, no reference. A name that would follow her through the industry for a long time. Or 6 months. Full salary. 20 hours a week, volunteering at a senior center Isla's mother would have recognized, plus a public apology unscripted, in Bianca's own words." Bianca didn't need time to decide. "The program," she said. "Please, I'll do the program." Isla nodded once. "Go home for the day, Ms. Sterling." Bianca made it almost to the door before she turned back. "Mrs. Fontaine, I don't have the words. I'm so sorry. I know you are, Isla said. The work starts now. By Monday morning, the whole company knew. Isla had asked Beatrice to call a mandatory town hall. Every employee in the atrium, 9 sharp, no exceptions, remote staff joining by video. She stood at the podium in the same charcoal suit, no notes. My name is Isla Fontaine. I'm the founder and majority owner of this company. Some of you have known me as the woman who fixes the printer. As of today, you'll know me as both. She let that land, then went on. I'm not telling you this to scare anyone. I'm telling you because a company that treats the person who cleans its break room differently than it treats its executives isn't a company I want to run, and it shouldn't be one any of you want to work for. She played the video. 22 voices, chanting, echoing off marble. When it ended, the silence in the atrium was total. I counted 22 faces in that room, she said. I remember all of them. I'm not going to fire anyone over it. That isn't the point. The point is that I want you to know I remember. A young woman in the 3rd row sat down on the floor and put her face in her hands. Isla went on. An anonymous ethics hotline reporting straight to the board. Mandatory dignity training led by outside facilitators. A floor days program requiring every vice president and above, herself included, to spend 2 full days a year working alongside custodial, security, and front desk staff, not observing, working, and a full independent review of every termination involving an employee over 60 in the last 3 years, with reinstatement and back pay wherever wrongdoing was found. Some of you are watching this from home right now, she said. To you, I'm sorry, we failed you. We're going to make it right. Months later, Porter Ainsley pleaded guilty in federal court. Isla sat in the back row, no notes, and listened as the sentence came down. Meredith Pruitt's class action settled for just over $2 million, split among the 7 former employees. Dorothy Kessler, 61, used her share to finally pay off her house, and cried for a long while at her kitchen table the day the check cleared. Meredith herself landed on more than one quiet do-not-hire list. Her certification was revoked. She left the city. Bianca Sterling finished her 6 months, showing up twice a week for 20 weeks straight at a senior center on the East Side, reading aloud to a 90-year-old former school teacher, learning names, holding a hand or two on nights. Nobody else could be there. She came back afterward and asked, without anyone suggesting it, to be reassigned to the facilities team. Isla approved it without a word of commentary. Bianca stayed there for over a year. In the fall, Isla announced the Dolores Fontaine Fund, an endowment for the children of service and hospitality workers across the state. At the dedication, she read her mother's last letter out loud to a room of 300 people and got through most of it before her voice broke. Afterward, a reporter caught her near the door and asked if she regretted not revealing herself sooner, before the harassment ever started. Isla thought about it for a moment. I regret that it was necessary at all, she said. I don't regret learning the truth about the people I trusted to run my company. A painful truth beats a comfortable lie every time. Then she walked out into the afternoon light. 6 months after that Friday, Isla put the plain badge back on. It was a Tuesday. She pushed her cart out of the service elevator just before 6, the way she always had, and she kept doing it for as long as her schedule allowed. The first person who saw her that morning was a new hire from the analyst pool, maybe 3 weeks in, who set down her coffee, walked over and said, "Good morning. I don't think we've met." "Isla," she said. "Good morning to you, too." By 8, half the floor had stopped to say hello. Some of them had stood in that atrium 6 months earlier. None of them looked away anymore. Around 10, a kid barely out of college, new that same week, saw her lifting a full bag from the trash bin and jogged over. "That looks heavy, let me grab an end." He had no idea who she was. He was helping simply because someone looked like they could use it. Isla smiled. Her mother's smile, the one Dolores used to call her sunrise smile. "You're going to do just fine here," she said. That Friday, an envelope landed on Dorothy Kessler's desk, back in accounts payable, reinstated, full seniority restored. She opened it, looked at the signature in the bottom right corner, and sat quietly at her desk for almost 10 minutes before she could pick up her pen again. Down in the lobby, 2 new frames went up on the wall by the fountain. One held the old magazine photo, a young woman standing outside a rented office with a set of keys in her hand. The other held a photograph of a woman in a diner uniform, hair tied back, eyes tired and warm at once. Underneath, in small engraved letters, Dolores Fontaine, 1959-2004. She raised a daughter who remembered.